Amidst the rubble, moments of joy and desperation as survivors are found alive after 90 hours, but hope for others fades. And in Antakya, in the south of Turkey, the earthquake has reduced the city to remains. Euronews' international correspondent Annalise Borges is on the ground. A moment of hope as a young boy is rescued alive after 88 hours of being underneath the rubble of a collapsed building in Hatay province in Turkey. And soon after, his father is also brought out alive. In the city of Antakya, 3 others were also rescued on Thursday evening after being buried for 90 hours. The devastating 7.8 magnitude earthquake first struck early Monday morning when people were asleep. Antakya was one of the hardest hit areas. Over in Syria, the search continues as hope of finding survivors fades. The UN says it's released more than 23 million euros to jumpstart the response to the war-torn country. The first aid convoy had reached rebel-held northwestern parts of Syria on Thursday, as thousands of families spent freezing nights in cars and makeshift tents.
Good morning, Secretary.
However, the UN Secretary-General says the country needs more.
Just hours ago, the first United Nations convoy crossed into northern Syria through the Bab al-Awa crossing. It included 6 trucks carrying shelter and other desperately needed relief supplies. More help is on the way, but much more is needed.
Meanwhile, 80 tons of humanitarian aid has been loaded onto a plane in Greece bound for Adana in southern Turkey. And the World Health Organization is sending health kits and medical equipment to both countries.
Conditions for the rescue teams who continue to work to try and find survivors under the rubble are very, very difficult. It's very, very cold, and many of these workers have been sleeping right here, out in the open, burning whatever they can find for heat. Some of them have tents or have managed to find a car. Destruction is so widespread. Everywhere you look, there is a house that has been completely flattened. All these apartment blocks have been damaged. And sirens are non-stop. Authorities are asking people not to go back to their homes. It's not safe, and so every single car around here has a family sleeping inside. The World Health Organization is warning that these people, these survivors who have no access to electricity, heating or running water, are also under great danger. The international pledges for help have been translated into some sort of assistance. Help is reaching these areas, but it's been quite slow coming, and many people here are angry about that. The government says this is a tragedy of unprecedented proportions and that they are trying to do the best they can, but that there was no way they could be prepared for this. The fact of the matter is the roads have also been damaged, and there's an incredible amount of traffic, of people, but also of machinery on those roads. And as you can see, basic services have also been affected. This used to be a hospital here in Antakya, and it's obviously not operating anymore. Annalise Borges in Antakya, southern Turkey, for Euronews.
Turkey has experienced earthquakes before. It straddles several fault lines, but tremors of this magnitude in this particular region of the southeast of the country and northern Syria are rare.
Large earthquakes of about magnitude 7 in Turkey might happen between every few hundred years. They're more common in the north. along a fault called the Northern Anatolian Fault than they are where this earthquake happened, where they may only happen every 500 years or so.
After the earthquake hit, thousands of buildings collapsed, adding to the devastation. And though modern structures are better equipped to withstand shaking, some of the region's older buildings crumbled. It's an ongoing problem, and governments have some difficult decisions to make.
We do a thing called retrofitting, where we try to increase the capacity of these buildings to earthquake. The problem with that is it's quite expensive.
For now, it's a balancing act.
It's difficult because the earthquake, it might be 500 years until it happens again, right? So do you invest the money? Do you design your buildings? Do you retrofit all your buildings to withstand this kind of shaking? If you do, however, it does make a very big difference that the buildings are much less likely to collapse.
We only know for sure how good something is when the next earthquake strikes, because all that happens is that the earthquake finds the next weakest link in the chain.
During a whirlwind European tour, Ukraine's president pushed EU leaders to get his country into the bloc faster, saying Ukraine is Europe. The leaders responded by pledging they would do all it takes to back Ukraine, but they couldn't create a clear timeline for membership.
I think I heard, maybe I wanted to hear, maybe we want too much, but anyway, so I think I heard that we'll after the recommendation, the result about our recommendations, and we can start opening the dialogue about our future or in EU. Yes,
Madam President, we'll take a few questions.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says more still needs to be done for the bid.
It is impressive to see how highly professional, with enormous quality, Ukraine is advancing on doing the necessary reforms and working on these 7 steps. For example, the adoption of the anti-corruption strategy, the resumption of the High Judicial Council, the new media law. All these are steps absolutely in the right direction. More needs to be done, but important is to understand there is no rigid timeline.
Von der Leyen has also outlined the EU's 10th package of sanctions against Russia, as well as measures to strengthen border controls and security infrastructure in the bloc. At least 4 people have been killed in an explosion at a former factory in the Ukrainian capital on Thursday. Around 10 people were believed to have been inside the building when the blast happened. Alina's husband was working at the site at the time. She said that there was an explosion, but the location was unclear. She started to call her husband, but didn't manage to get him, so she went to see. Meanwhile, soldiers on the front line in Sumy, northeast of the country, are preparing for a new Russian offensive from their trenches. The Russian military is just over a kilometer away from the Ukrainian troops. This, as the UN's nuclear watchdog chief is in Moscow for talks on safety in Ukraine. There have been attacks around several facilities, raising fears of a nuclear incident.
The first round of voting last Sunday saw 2 leading candidates emerge. Front-runner Nikos Christodoulides, a former foreign minister, won the most votes. He'll be up against Andreas Mavroyiannis, who surprised many by coming second. Both have strategies for dealing with Turkey.
Καλάθη των ευρωτουρκικών, τα οποία είναι σαφώς σημαντικά για την Τουρκία, για την τουρκική κυβέρνηση, για την τουρκική κοινωνία, με πολιτικά, οικονομικά και κοινωνικά ωφέλη. Εμείς είμαστε έτοιμοι να τα συζητήσουμε μαζί με το Κυπριακό, να τα συζητήσουμε όλα αυτά με την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση να έχει ένα πρωταγωνιστικό ρόλο.
Μέσα από μια διαφορετική προσέγγιση που θα είναι αμοιβαία επωφελής, αξιοποιώντας και αν θέλετε, τα εργαλεία που μπορεί να έχουμε στη διάθεσή μας, όπως είναι οι σχέσεις της Τουρκίας με την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση και όπως είναι και η κατάσταση στην Ανατολική Μεσόγειο, περιλαμβανομένου και του ζητήματος των υδρογοναθράκων.
Another pressing issue is on how best to deal with asylum seekers. More than 100,000 have arrived in Cyprus in the last 20 years.
Είναι ένα το να είναι δύσκολο και είναι άλλο να νομίζουμε ότι είναι λύση το να κάνουμε 20 χιλιόμετρα φράχτη σε μια γραμμή 200 χιλιόμετρων και να νομίζουμε ότι κάναμε οτιδήποτε. Ταχεία διεκπεραίωση των αιτήσεων, μιλάμε για μέρες και όχι για 6-8 χρόνια που έχουμε τώρα. Και μετά συστηματικός επαναπατρισμός.
Μία από τις πρώτες αποφάσεις του Υπουργικού Συμβουλίου θα είναι η σύσταση Υφυπουργείου Μετανάστευσης, το οποίο θα συστεγάσει όλες τις υπηρεσίες έτσι ώστε να γίνουν σαφώς πιο γρήγορες οι διαδικασίες μας. Σαφώς θα βοηθήσει στο να σταλεί το μήνυμα, αλλά θα είναι και στην πράξη, ότι η Κύπρος δεν είναι πλέον ελκυστικός προορισμός.
The outgoing head of state, Nikos Anastasiadis, has served for 2 consecutive 5-year terms.